Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Party Popper. Today, I have an unbelievable story for you, a story filled with love, betrayal, shocking secrets, and justice. Imagine discovering on your wedding day that the person you're about to marry has been living a dangerous double life. What would you do? My name is Julia Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a captain in the United States Marine Corps. Discipline, loyalty, and honor have shaped every chapter of my life. I had served in dangerous missions overseas, led Marines through impossible situations, and earned respect from everyone under my command. But nothing prepared me for the battle waiting at my own wedding. The wedding was held at a beautiful countryside estate outside Boston. White roses decorated every table, a string quartet played softly, and hundreds of guests gathered to celebrate what they believed would be the happiest day of my life. My fiancé, Ethan Brooks, smiled confidently as he greeted relatives and business partners. To everyone else, he looked like the perfect gentleman. I had met Ethan 2 years earlier during a charity fundraiser for veterans. He was successful, charming, and generous. He always knew the right words to say. My closest friends admired him, and even my commanding officer congratulated me for finding someone who seemed to understand the sacrifices of military life. But there was one person who never trusted him, my younger sister, Emily. The ceremony began exactly at 4 o'clock. As I stood at the altar in my white wedding gown, I felt years of loneliness finally disappearing. My father proudly walked me down the aisle, tears shining in his eyes. The minister asked us to exchange vows. Just as Ethan reached for my hand, the ballroom doors burst open. A woman in a navy blue business suit stepped inside, followed by 2 federal agents. "Stop the ceremony," she shouted. The room fell silent. Guests stared in disbelief. The woman held up a thick folder. "Captain Julia Carter deserves to know the truth before she marries this man." Ethan's confident smile vanished. "What is this?" he demanded. The woman introduced herself as Rachel Monroe, a financial investigator. She looked directly at me. "Captain Carter, your fiancé has been running a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme through several shell companies. He's currently under federal investigation." Gasps echoed throughout the hall. Ethan laughed nervously. "She's lying." Rachel calmly opened the folder. Inside were bank transfers, secret contracts, fake identities, and photographs of Ethan meeting known financial criminals. My heart pounded. "This can't be real," I whispered. Rachel continued. "We waited until today because we finally gathered enough evidence. We didn't want another innocent victim tied to his crimes through marriage." The federal agents stepped closer. Ethan slowly backed away. Then something even more shocking happened. My best friend, Sophia, stood up from the front row. Everyone looked at her. Sophia lowered her head. "I helped Rachel investigate him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You, what?" She wiped away tears. "I knew you'd never believe me if I accused Ethan without proof. I had to stay close to him while the investigators collected evidence." Emily walked beside Sophia. "I tried to warn you." My knees weakened. The man I trusted most had been living a double life. Suddenly Ethan grabbed my wrist. "Julia, don't listen to them. They're destroying our future." Years of Marine training kicked in. I twisted free with one quick move and stepped backward. "You lied to me." His face changed completely. The charming businessman disappeared. In his place stood an angry, desperate criminal. The federal agents moved toward him as dozens of shocked guests watched in silence. The wedding hall erupted into chaos. Guests whispered nervously, phones appeared in every direction, and the once beautiful celebration transformed into the scene of a federal arrest. Ethan's parents stood frozen, unable to believe what they were witnessing, while my relatives surrounded me, trying to comfort me. But years in the Marine Corps had taught me one thing: when everything falls apart, stay calm. The two federal agents stepped toward Ethan. "Ethan Brooks," one of them announced, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and obstruction of justice." For a brief moment, Ethan raised his hands as if he were going to surrender. Then he suddenly shoved one of the agents aside. The ballroom exploded with screams. He sprinted toward the emergency exit, knocking over chairs and decorations. Without thinking, I kicked off my high heels and chased after him, my wedding dress slowing me down but not enough to stop years of military conditioning. "Julia, don't!" Emily shouted. But I couldn't let him escape. Outside, Ethan jumped into a black SUV parked behind the venue. Before he could close the driver's door, I reached the vehicle and grabbed the handle. He slammed the door against my arm and sped away, nearly knocking me to the ground. Within minutes, local police and federal officers flooded the property. Roadblocks were set up across nearby highways, and helicopters joined the search. As investigators questioned guests, Rachel Monroe approached me with another folder. "I'm sorry you had to learn the truth this way," she said softly. I nodded, still struggling to process everything. Rachel explained that Ethan hadn't only stolen millions from investors. He had also created fake charities, forged military donation records, and manipulated the identities of wounded veterans to hide stolen money. The investigation had taken nearly 18 months, and every piece of evidence pointed to him as the leader of a sophisticated criminal network. "What about me?" I asked quietly. "You were never a suspect," Rachel assured me. "In fact, we believe he intended to use your military reputation to make his businesses appear trustworthy." That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. He had never truly loved me. I had simply been another part of his plan. Later that evening, Sophia came to sit beside me. "I know you'll probably never forgive me," she said through tears. "Pretending to support Ethan was the hardest thing I've ever done." I looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You saved my life." She broke down crying as I hugged her tightly. Emily joined us, and for the first time that day, I felt surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. The next morning, national news outlets covered the dramatic wedding arrest. Reporters praised the federal investigation, while many called me a symbol of strength for remaining composed under unimaginable pressure. 3 days later, investigators received an anonymous tip. Ethan had been hiding in an abandoned warehouse near the docks, planning to leave the country on a private boat. Federal agents surrounded the area. This time, there was nowhere left for him to run. As I watched the live news coverage from my living room, Ethan walked out of the warehouse in handcuffs, his head lowered in defeat. The man who had nearly become my husband was finally facing justice. But I knew the hardest part of my journey, rebuilding my own life, was only just beginning. 6 months passed after the wedding that never happened. Life slowly returned to normal, but I wasn't the same woman who had walked down the aisle believing in a perfect future. The betrayal had left deep scars, yet my years in the Marine Corps reminded me that strength isn't measured by avoiding pain, it's measured by how you rise after it. Ethan's trial became national news. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence of his criminal empire. More than 50 victims testified about losing their life savings after trusting his fake investment companies. Several veterans spoke about how he had stolen donations meant for wounded service members. Every witness added another piece to the truth that had been hidden for years. When I was called to testify, I walked into the courtroom wearing my Marine Corps dress uniform. The room fell silent. Ethan looked at me from the defense table. He appeared completely different from the confident man I had once loved. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by a prison uniform. His eyes no longer held arrogance, only regret. The prosecutor asked me one question. "Captain Carter, why did you decide to testify today?" I took a deep breath. Because lies only survive when good people stay silent. I refused to let another family experience what mine did. The courtroom remained quiet as I stepped down. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury reached its decision. Guilty on all counts. Ethan was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, ordered to repay millions of dollars to his victims, and permanently banned from operating financial businesses again. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt truly free. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me. One journalist asked, "Captain Carter, do you regret that your wedding was interrupted?" I smiled gently. No. I don't regret losing a liar. I regret only that the truth didn't come sooner. That interruption saved my future. The interview quickly spread across television and social media, inspiring thousands of people who had experienced betrayal or financial scams. I began receiving letters from strangers thanking me for speaking honestly about trust, resilience, and starting over. Months later, I partnered with veteran organizations and financial crime investigators to educate military families about fraud. We organized workshops across the country, helping people recognize warning signs before becoming victims. Emily and Sophia remained by my side through everything. The bond between us grew stronger than ever, and I realized that real family isn't defined by perfect moments, it's defined by standing together during the hardest ones. On the anniversary of the canceled wedding, we returned to the same countryside estate. This time, there were no decorations, no guests, and no painful expectations. We simply watched the sunset over the fields. Emily smiled. Do you ever wish that day had gone differently? I looked across the quiet landscape and shook my head. At first, yes. But now I understand that sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the day that saves you. We laughed together, leaving the past where it belonged. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. My story had never been about a ruined wedding. It was about discovering the truth, finding the courage to walk away from deception, and proving that even after the deepest betrayal, a stronger and brighter future is still possible.